Today I'm chatting to my friend Sharon. I met Sharon, who has Usher Syndrome, at the Holiday Inn at Regent's Park at the Retina UK conference. I was standing ready to get a room card, and Sharon overheard me talking to the person that was giving me assistance, and she turned around and said, "Are you Rob?" I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "I've been following you on social media for ages. I'm Sharon." I was like, "Sharon Usher story." It's like brilliant. So I was like, I have to have you on my YouTube channel having a conversation because she is just awesome, and I know you're all gonna love her. So take a look and leave us a nice comment after you watched it. It's all good. Sharon, it's so nice to see you. Thank you for joining me. I'm gonna kick us off with question number one, which is, can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Usher Syndrome?
Sure. So my name's Sharon Rowe. I have a condition called Usher Syndrome. Usher Syndrome is the leading cause of both blindness and deafness. The blindness part is a condition called retinitis pigmentosa, which is RP for short. So that's the sight part of Usher Syndrome, and obviously the hearing loss. It's genetic, progressive, and at this moment in time, there is no cure.
So, if you can remember, my diagnosis of RP and choroideremia was last year, so it's really clear for me. But what age were you when you were first diagnosed, and how did that moment impact you?
I was diagnosed with RP when I was around about 47, 48. So when I went for an eye test, they called me back and said, I have a condition called retinitis pigmentosa. And I had no idea what it was. I'd never heard of the word. And they decided to send me for some genetic testing. And the genetic testing came back as I have Usher syndrome type 2A. And that was around about a couple of years later when I finally got my diagnosis. And that was delivered to me through lockdown. So when I got my diagnosis, there was no follow up, there were no appointments, there were no explanation of what it was. So we had to, as a family, sit down and basically Google it. I had to look the word up to find out what Usher syndrome meant. And as you can imagine, what I found was quite, well, it was horrendous for me. The fact that potentially I could be losing my eyesight and losing my hearing. Now I'm 56 years of age now. So I've always known there's something wrong with my eyesight. I've always known there's something wrong with my hearing. And I think it was kind of out of fear that I didn't go and have it looked at or tested. But after a lot of falls and breaks, spent a lot of time in A&E, decided that it was about time that I had to test to find out what was going on. So basically, yes, I was diagnosed about 2021. So that's not so long ago with Usher syndrome type 2. And there are 3 types of Usher syndrome. So, but I won't get into the whole science behind it. But yeah, it was very traumatic for me to find out that's exactly what I had, and that I would have to adapt my life going forward. And I suppose I kind of scratched my head the fact that I spent majority of my life not knowing what I had. And I suppose it's kind of making up those pieces as I went along. You know, the hearing, I had no idea how much hearing loss I had, and my sight was deteriorating quite fast. So yeah, I was in my late 40s when I was diagnosed with the condition.
That must have been a shock.
It was a massive shock. It was, I mean, it took me. In fact, I think I think on the day that I got my letter and I googled what it was. I think within like 10, 15 minutes, I just made myself a drink and sat down and spoke to my husband and family and said, well, I'm not going, surely I'm not going blind, and I'm not going to be losing my hearing. It's crazy. I don't even know what Usher syndrome is. But after a lot of research, within the next couple of weeks, I found the charity CureUsher syndrome, and I reached out to them at the time, but there were no list of who I could contact. Obviously, I know a lot of the charities now, but at the time there was nothing. I couldn't contact anybody. I tried to ring the doctors, tried to ring the genetic team, but we're middle of lockdown. There was nothing there for me at all. So it was really scary. So yeah, we had to just dig deep. I had to put my big girl pants on and take a deep breath and find out for myself. You know, I'm not the type of person to sit down and just let something eat me away. So yeah, so I just ploughed on, and I'm still ploughing on now. But yes, it was very worrying, and it was devastating.
Yeah, I mean, I know all about RP, but the hearing loss as well, because my hearing is good because my eyes are bad, so I rely on my hearing. So you know, that's tough. It's the tough thing about Usher's, like it's brutal.
It is. I think it wasn't until I went for an hearing test. That was about 6 months after I was diagnosed with Usher syndrome. Eventually got an appointment, and it wasn't until I had my hearing aids fitted that I'd realised just how much I'd been missing out on. I mean, you never miss what you never had. But the sounds and the noises, in fact, the drive home with my daughter, she was driving me home, it was massively overwhelming because I was hearing noises and sirens that I'd never heard before. And so my hearing loss is high tones and low tones. So I can't hear high pitches, fire alarms, things like that, low tones. So I have like between 40 and 60 decibels. That's my range. But when I had my hearing aids fitted, I think I cried all the way home that I'd missed out on so much for decades. And I still have a bit of a love-hate relationship with them. So, you know, I've got my central hearing, but if there's any background noise, I will struggle to hear. I've learned to lip read. And I do wear them when if I go to a restaurant or a bar. I generally do put my hearing aids in because I really do struggle. But you can imagine if it's low lighting and I can't hear, the combination between the two senses, it's very difficult. So yeah.
Well, that is so powerful. All of that you've just said, and your lived experience. What is the biggest misconception about Usher syndrome, or just blindness in general?
Well, I've found out of the last 5 to 6 years since being diagnosed, the misconception that people have is that blindness is blind. You're fully blind. You can't see anything. You have a guide dog, or you wear dark glasses. And I have learned that some people can be quite cruel. I did my cane training quite quickly after I'd been diagnosed, so that was a whole different level of stress and the thought of the stigma that brings. But if I had a penny for every time someone approached me and said, "Excuse me, are you blind? Is that why you're using a cane? Why are you on your mobile phone if you're blind?" I'm sure you've heard them all before. I had one. I actually had one medic, believe it or not, ask me what Usher syndrome was, and I tried to explain what it was, but they had no idea, never heard of it. And I heard, "Is there any eye drops for that? Can you get any eye drops for your condition?" What? No, I don't think so. And if there was, I think we'd all have them. I think it's just I'm saying uneducated, and this is why we're here, raising awareness for those people who don't understand what blindness is. And different, it's a broad spectrum of, everybody's different at different levels. But it's quite tough when you have to explain your condition over and over again to people who think that it's okay to approach her when you're out and about. Now, the best thing I did, Rob, was the fact that I looked at my cane. I didn't like it. I had a bad relationship with it, and I didn't like how people were looking at me and approaching me and thinking that I was fake, especially when I looked straight at them. So the biggest thing I did was I decorated it. As you know, it's very, very, very sparkly, and that has been a massive turning point for me. I did that over a year ago, the amount of people now that come up to me, they don't ask me if I'm blind. They don't generally ask me anything. They'll say, oh my goodness, look at that cane. How sparkly is that cane? That's incredible. And it's kind of separated the two. It separated the stigma and the fear of people looking at me and wondering if they're going to ask me a question or just be generally horrible. But now it's completely different. People just, children approach me and say, oh my goodness, I love your cane. So yeah, so that's been amazing. So there can be some horrible questions out there, and it's very hard to explain it to people. But yeah, there's a lot of misconception about blindness.
Sharon, you know how much I'm into health and fitness, so we had to get something like this in these questions. How important has physical and mental health been to helping you cope with Usher syndrome?
Physical and mental health is vital. It's the most important thing for me every day, 7 days a week. I'm generally quite an active person, and I was always worried that with this diagnosis that it would slow me down. In fact, I think it sped me up a little bit. I'm more inclined to improve, that I can do all the things that I used to do before. I'm quite active. I push the boundaries. I learn different things every day. And I just think healthy body, healthy mind. And as I'm losing my eyesight, and it's, you know, deteriorated quite fast over the last 5 years, I've had to rely on my body. I'm holding my cane, you know, when you're swiping from left to right, you know, it can cause a lot of problems down your arm. So I do a lot of resistance training. And my daughter's quite like a drill instructor, so I don't get away with it. So she helps me a lot, to be fair. So yeah, I look after my body, it looks after my mind, and it's massively important for me to be able to get up out of bed. Don't get me wrong, there are days where I just don't want to get out of bed. There are days where I just want to give in, but there is that, you know, negative self-talk in my head. At some points I just don't want to do anything, but I will kick my own bottom and say, get up, you can do this. I can have a day, I can relax, but majority of the time I do get up, I show up, I believe in myself, and I just try and push on with the day. And I always feel better for it at the end of the day that I've done that. So yeah, it's massive, Rob. Yeah, physical and mental health is massive.
And also, I know a little secret, and you haven't alluded to it yet, but I know you're recovering from a bit of a trauma. And has it helped the recovery from that as well?
It has, and I'll tell you what's happened. About 8 weeks ago, I had surgery on my throat. So I had something called hyperparathyroidism. So it's basically a tumour on one of your parathyroids, and left untreated, which mine was for quite some time, can cause osteoporosis, brain fog. It can cause a lot of digestive problems, liver problems. So my body was kind of breaking down bit by bit. So I was struggling with the mental and the physical side, because my bones were hurting me every single day. But even then, and I knew I had this condition, I would still push to go and exercise, even if it was 10 minutes, even just a little walk, I would push to do that. So I had surgery 8 weeks ago. There was quite a lot of damage to my voice box. So I've been really struggling over the last 8 weeks to speak. It's a little bit quivery today, but bit by bit it's coming back. So it's getting stronger every day. So I do apologise if it's coming across a little bit weak, but yeah, so that's quite traumatic to be told you've got a tumour in your throat. But I'm a tough cooker. I just carry on. You just got to get up and carry on, and yeah. So, and that's exactly what I do. So if I can do it and encourage other people to do it, then that's fantastic.
And that's why I had to get you on here, because I just love everything you stand for, and you know, we're very similar like that, I'd like to think. So yeah, I'm glad you're here, and you sound brilliant, you know. So yeah, it's good.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much.
So Sharon, this one is really interesting because I don't think we blow our own trumpets enough. Since your diagnosis, what is the achievement that you're most proudest of?
Wow. Okay. I don't often think about things like that, what I've achieved. If I'm really honest, and this might sound a bit of a cliche, but actually getting out of bed and putting one foot in front of the other, that is a big achievement for everything I feel I've been through and going through. That's the first step. And I think getting out of bed and putting one foot in front of the other has allowed me to explore social media, which I promise you, 5-6 years ago, I had no idea. I'd never been on Instagram. I just didn't know how to work the entire thing. But I thought if I'm going to do something with this, the silver lining is that I'm going to share my awareness. I'm going to share what it feels like to live with something like Usher Syndrome. I do a lot of pictures, I do a lot of little videos, but the one thing I don't do is actually verbally explaining what it's like to live with Usher Syndrome. And I think secondly, being a part of the charity CureUsher, which is the very first charity I found when I was diagnosed. And a lovely lady called Jo Milne, who was the founder of CureUsher, a fantastic woman. So, and I'm now a trustee of that charity, and it's fantastic. And I've got to meet so many wonderful people with, like you, Rob. If it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have met you. And there are so many people with different eye conditions. And I've had the pleasure of listening to other people's stories. So I'm very proud of myself for firstly getting out of bed and showing up. So that's what I'm proud of the most.
And that's lovely. I really like that. And actually, I'm talking to Joe next month. And
okay.
for everyone that's watching that loves you as much as I do, we're going to make sure that all the links go down below in the description. So people watching this, go and follow Sharon. It's amazing. Your story is amazing. I'm just so glad that we got to meet earlier, last month.
Yeah.
Great.
And I didn't cry, so that's a positive for me.
No, there was not many tears. That was good. It was all good. What are your hopes for yourself and for the kind of Usher community going forwards?
For myself, is to continue to do what I'm doing now. Is to bring about awareness, trying my very best to help other people. Went to a ball two weeks ago, the CureUsher ball, and I could not believe the amount of people that approached me. And so that's why I write a lot of poetry as well. So I do put that on my Instagram page. So the poetry mainly is about, my condition. It's not all about the condition, but one lady did come up to me and say that one day she was so down and she just came across one of my poems that had been shared. And it was the reason why she actually got up and out of bed that day and started to read all the things that I've been putting on my social media. And obviously maybe looked at my age as well, the fact that I am a woman in her 50s. This lady was half my age. And I think that can be quite empowering for some people who have been newly diagnosed to look at someone like me who's had a full life, that I used to drive a car, that I've lived decades without worrying, not knowing about my eyesight condition. So if I can do it, lots of other people can do it too. So just pushing on with the awareness, and ultimately would be wonderful if we had a cure. But how wonderful would that be, or at least slow it down for the Usher community and anybody else with sight loss. So, but yes, that's pretty much me.
Yeah, we need a cure for all of this stuff, definitely. So it leads into my final question for you. Sharon, I think I know what you're going to say to this question, but what would be your one piece of advice for everybody watching this and listening to what you have to say today?
Any advice I would give is the advice I give to myself. And it's kind of short and sweet, but I tell myself this every single day. Get up, show up, and believe in yourself. I stick by those 3 rules. And that's what gets me through the day. And I tell myself that every single morning, no matter how I feel, get up, show up, and believe in yourself. Because, you know, everybody's awesome, everyone's wonderful. And, you know, we've all got something in us to love. So yeah, that's what I would say. Get up, show up, and really believe in yourself.